We are in the thick of it here of day 2 of the Magic the Gathering World Championship. Some great moments here from round number 8, Dominaria draft, the second of this weekend. Some amazing plays and really cool deck building decisions by the players last round. And more draft is coming up. Here's a look at your overall leaderboard. Javier Dominguez leads things front of the pack at 7-1, followed closely by Gregor Kowalski on 6-2, and Ken Yukihiro on 6-2 as well. Let's head down to the feature match area for round number 9.
And welcome back to the booth here at the Magic the Gathering World Championships for 2018. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe, that's Simon Gertzen. And boy, we've got some powerhouses lined up, as you often do at a World Championship level event. We have two absolute monsters of American limited Magic. Specifically, we've got Ben Stark down in the feature match area. He's kind of the first name that that comes to your head when you think of Americans and drafting, but Mike Sigrist is right there with him. Absolutely a limited stalwart as well. 5-3 versus 4-4, so there's actually quite a lot on the line here for Sigrist, as he's starting to get to that shaky territory quite quickly, where for Stark, if you can get out to 6-3, you got one more round of booster draft to go after this, and you could find yourself in a really good position to head into that constructed round and make a run for top 4. So two excellent top-tier players ready to see next to each other and battle it out down in the feature match area. I was taking a look at Ben Stark's draft deck. It's a pretty wide-ranging deck here, Simon. He's got two copies of Grow from the Ashes to get himself a bunch of lands of varying colors, and he is actually playing 4 colors total here.
He's playing a red-green deck that's dipping into blue and black, so quite the greedy, late-game oriented deck. We don't know if that was intentional or if he had to try to salvage his draft somehow. Not the best deck we've ever seen.
No, this isn't one of those, classic powerhouse decks, but it does have some good stuff in it and a game plan that could work for Ben.
Yeah, it's certainly not, let's say, a streamlined white-blue deck with Teferi.
And it looks like Sigrist ran back what he was playing yesterday. He's playing blue-white again.
With Teferi.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. He didn't have one of those yesterday. All right, players are getting the cue to go, and that means that we're ready to go here in round number 9. Looks like Mike Sigrist is going to be on the play. Leads off with an Island Adventurous Impulse now for Ben Stark to kick things off on his side of the battlefield. He's going to grab a Llanowar Elves, the card he probably would have preferred to play here on turn number 1, but what are you going to do? Sigrist hoping that Ben missed with the Adventurous Impulse, and of course, Ben not just taking the joke. Instead, he's going to explain why it's so difficult to to miss with Adventurous Impulse. In the meantime, that Knight of New Benalia, the 3/1, is going to just trade off for the Llanowar Elves. So Ben's going to be quite happy that he had that there. As look at the combo in place here. And in fact, why did Mike trade?
Yep, I wouldn't have attacked there. If you have a Pegasus Cursor as the follow-up, of course there was a good chance that Ben takes the damage, but Ben is actually concerned about flooding out with his draw. He already had a bunch of mana sources, and that Llanowar Elves wasn't contributing a significant amount to what he was doing. Interesting choice.
Yeah, I did see, by the way, that we may get a hint here as what Sigrist is up to as far as big picture game plan goes. He's got Teferi, Hero of Dominaria in his hand, and we may see him simply try to set up for that. A great draw step for him here, though. He was going to miss his land drop. Maybe I spoke too soon. He finds Divination and can't find a land. He's got 7 cards in his hand. He just needs to hit those lands. He's got such a powerful card going with that Teferi. In the meantime, Keldon Raider is going to discard a Jousting Lance, but that's because Ben had an additional one left over. He's going to throw that one on the Yavimaya Saphir, get in with both of those creatures, and this one could fall away from Mike Sigrist very quickly if he can't get his feet under him. Good news for Mike, though. He finds a land here.
Yeah, and that is always the point where you're sweating it. You have to find that land. Of course, Divination didn't find Mike Sigrist one. Now he has land number 4. I think that Barrett Stewart of Argive could be really good at stemming the bleeding a little bit.
Yeah, the downside to it here is that Ben's plan is not going wide, but rather going tall, as it were. He's assembled 2 4-powered creatures that I think he's more than happy to pay Baird's tax for here. And Baird, unfortunately, doesn't tussle with either of them profitably. So a tough spot here for Sigrist. And he's just going to try to stem the bleeding a little more proactively. He's going to play Deep Freeze on the Keldon Raider. That's going to turn it into an 0-4 with Defender, so it's not going to be attacking anytime soon. He still has a Pegasus Courser to hold back the Saproling. That leaves just that. Yavimaya Sapherd holding a Jousting Lance, hitting for 4 damage a turn. It adds up very quickly. Wow, Mike Sigrist has some serious stuff going on in this deck, though. If he can get that Teferi down, I think he's going to be able to win this game easily, given the fact that Ben played nothing here. He has Urza's Ruinous Blast and Karn's Temporal Sundering in his hand.
That's insane.
What in the world? Well, this Baird also does get the job done. Like, this could go very well for Sigrist. Oh, right as I say that. Oh, no. I'm going to take it back. So it was Spore Swarm for Stark. He did have a play, but Baird very good against this.
So does Baird survive? That's kind of the big question here.
Yeah, because the plan for Sigrist right now is to have Baird survive, draw a land, play Urza's Ruinous Blast, and then laugh at Ben Stark. I wouldn't be surprised to see Mike chump block here with his Pegasus Courser. If his plan is absolutely on this Urza's Ruinous Blast, then he is going to need to draw a land right now, and he finds Gideon's Reproach. Not what he wanted to see, but that might actually work.
Could be worse. Could be worse.
Yeah. Is that an Elfheim Druid that Ben Stark played at the bottom? Because that's not a real threat either.
Yes, but it is a creature that generates mana to pay for Baird's ability.
Ah, good point. Interesting there from Sigrist. He's actually going to keep up 2 copies of Gideon's Reproach here. Not really what he wants to be doing when he has a sweeper in his hand, but hey,
it's not creatures, right? It's all permanents.
it's down to 8.
All non-legendary permanents. Right.
So Ben Stark, of course, knows what's up with Sigrist's deck list and says, what does Urza's Ruinous Blast do again? And Mike just sort of looks down at his hand and says, I can tell you right now, in fact. He wanted to make sure that it was all non-land permanents except for the ones that are legendary. He wanted to know, well, which ones do I get to keep and not? Is it just creatures? But as he found out, there's no good news there for Ben Stark. Exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary, and that's everything on Ben's side of the battlefield. Boy, Sigrist is just trying to hang on. If Ben Stark had a removal spell for Baird, we certainly would have seen it. He's got double trouble on wanting to get rid of that. Not only does it open the floodgates for his attack step, but it also shuts off the ability to have Urza's Ruinous Blast do any work.
Yeah. And Ben deciding that he cannot afford to attack with more than 1 creature this turn.
Nope. And he wants to use up his mana. He's got 6 mana. He's going to use Gitu Chronicler. And what did he get back? The Spore Swarm? Looks like it. That does give him a plan to rebuild post Urza's Ruinous Blast. Did Mike miss again? Wow, he drew Blessed Light. And now he's forced to just start running out creatures so that he has something to do in conjunction with this, with the other copy of Gideon's Reproach that he's got in his hand. Brutal.
Baird is doing a really good job, though. If that 2-4 hadn't been there, Ben would have overrun him with Saprolings.
Ben knows how close he is, and he knows exactly what Sigrist is trying to plan for. He's like, gosh, I've kept him off of this 5 mana, but I can't get over this Baird. He has enough mana to let all of his creatures attack. No, he's just going to play Mending of Dominaria. So this is Ben Stark trying to start planning for the future. The problem here, of course, is that, you know, there's also a Teferi in hand for Mike Sigrist. So it doesn't get a whole lot better even after the Urza's Ruinous Blast.
He did get a Thorn Elemental there.
Okay.
Could be quite a tricky card for Sigrist to deal with.
Sigrist still just cannot find land number 5. Again, he misses, but he's still drawing good stuff. He drew a Call of the Cavalry here. Mending of Dominaria, of course, would also get exiled if the Urza's Ruinous Blast were to go on the stack this turn, which is, I think, why you saw Ben start kind of shake his head a little there. I don't know if you caught that, but he's just like, I don't really want to be doing any of these things, but he also knows he can't just sit here. Oh, Mike, draw that land. He's running 17 lands in this deck, as is customary. The truth is, though, he's doing okay. It's pretty tough for Stark to actually kill him here. Wow, and look at the stuff he's getting. Now he has Grun and Thorn Elemental.
And that's a legendary creature. And that's the big downside of Urza's Ruinous Blast.
Yeah, the thing is, I actually don't like Urza's Ruinous Blast much at all. I find it to be woefully inadequate in situations where the card that you really want to kill is the one that you can't. Although it would have been amazing this game, to be fair to it. Also, by the way, we do see Kicker on Grun.
With the help of Elfheim Druid.
Oh, man. Just a cool attack for 20 after an Urza's Ruinous Blast? That's not bad. Sigrist once again.
Yeah.
Missing his land drop.
Cool.
And Mike has to pass a turn back. Ben is going to now trigger the third chapter on Mending. Unfortunately for him, only one land ended up getting in his graveyard over that time, so he's not going to get a big boost off of that. And, you know, this is a situation where he may want as many lands as he can, given that he needs to pay that Baird tax if he's going to go for some big attack. But for now, going to be pretty happy with Grun.
I think 5 mana for a Thorn Elemental, a Grun, and a land is quite a good deal.
Agree. So now what?
We're now going to see a play pattern that is actually very common in Dominaria Draft, where a big ground creature is good, but it's actually not sufficient to just close out the game.
Right.
There's very little trample in the set overall, so all these 1/1 Saprolings, all these 2/2 Knights, every kind of ground creature is almost buying Sigrist another turn.
So we're going to see Grun attack for 20, but it's just going to get chump blocked here.
T20 coming at me.
And Sigrist has to find his 5th land before this Grun actually kills him. The interesting part is there's going to be a very tense turn that turn after, because Baird will have to chump block, but then he can play Teferi and put Grun away. Oh, interesting. Ben's going to actually just run out the Thorn Elemental and say, you got to find it now.
I like that. You have to pressure Sigrist there.
He found it. There's land number 5 with Ben Stark representing super lethal here. He's going to force the issue and basically say, Sigrist, you must cast Urza's Ruinous Blast to wipe away everything on the board except for Grun and
then
Baird.
And then Baird has to chump block.
That's right.
The Grun.
And then
Ben definitely has more plays. This is
Yes.
the key.
Yeah, that is absolutely the key here, because in hand for Sigrist, he has the ability to deal with Grun. He has Teferi to put him in the library, but he also has a Blessed Light. So he can make that line work. It depends on what Ben has as the follow-up.
And
I like Ben's stance here, though.
Yeah, me too. Ben had to play the Thorn Elemental, because otherwise Sigrist just sits there and says, look, I can do this for a few more turns. That's not a real problem for me.
There it is. Urza's Ruinous Blast goes on the stack, and look at the pile of permanents getting exiled on Ben Stark's side of the battlefield. Everything gone. Grun living up to his name here, lonely as it were, and I love it. Sigrist says, hey, this thing's got vigilance. I'm getting in for 2. Pass the turn back to you. Attack, force a chump block. So this was all preordained. We knew this part was coming. The question is, what can Ben add to the board? And it's a lot. A pair of goblins and a Thallid Omnivore. That's what he needed to do.
Ben knew exactly what he was doing. Ben knew, I'm going to play this. If Sigrist doesn't draw a land, that wins me the game. If Sigrist has the land, I'm going to... Oh yeah, he forgot to pay for Baird.
I had to pay 1 to attack the Gron.
Oh, that's correct.
Oh.
Yes. Okay.
They skipped through that because I think that both players knew that that play pattern was going to happen.
Yeah.
But you're totally right. He did not pay the 1 mana for Grun, and he needed every bit of mana to cast the 4 and the 2/2s there.
Yeah, that's not doing matter much.
This could change a lot.
I think they're just rewinding this and fixing this. It's both of these players were so in tune with each other.
Yes.
Both of them knew exactly what was going to happen, and Ben had his turn mapped out. He just kind of overlooked that he had 8 mana and had to pay 1 for
This
Baird.
could be a big difference. Now, the interesting thing is that Ben actually still wasn't presenting lethal damage anyway. It was 7 damage on board, but any creature follow-up before attacks would let it be lethal with the Thallid Omnivore. That is a little different now, as he would need 2 additional creatures to make that work. And this is assuming that Mike takes care of the Grunt, and again, he does have a couple of ways to do that. So let's see what Sigrist's plan is, because he has a lot of options in hand. Take a look at his hand here. He's got a couple of creatures, he's got, another Baird and a Relic Runner. He did hit his land for the turn as well. So there's Baird number 2, and is he just going to run the Relic Runner out, or is he going to leave up Gideon's Reproach? Relic Runner, go.
So Relic Runner is there to block the Grun.
Right.
That's pretty obvious.
Yeah, the Grun, interestingly, is lethal, whether it attacks on its own or in conjunction with other creatures.
And if Ben has a little bit of follow-up here, maybe a kicker spell, then the Baird is most likely also forced to jump block the Thallid Omnivore.
Oh, this has been a really sweet game.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Sigrist originally was trying to plan this game around keeping the board relatively clear and then playing Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, and riding that card to victory. But mana stumbles for turn after turn after turn put Ben in an interesting position where he knew exactly what Sigrist was up to with this Urza's Ruinous Blast and had to keep taking the odds in his favor over and over again, even though it meant taking on a lot of risk.
Now, slowly the higher card quality from Sigrist is showing here. And now we do have 2 lethal attackers. Well, effectively lethal attackers. The Thallid Omnivore, if it doesn't get blocked, will turn into a...
Not quite, right? He doesn't have enough mana?
He would have had 3 mana exactly. So 3 plus 6, 9. So that's
right.
where you see Sigrist blocking.
Yeah, he could have sacrificed every other creature. You're correct, Simon. So, block. And this is still a real bear of a board here if you're sitting in Mike Sigrist's seat.
Yep. So now if you Blessed Light the Grun, you are sweating a single creature by Ben, which would kill you. But I think you even know about the Spore Swarm.
You do.
The Spore Swarm is effectively +6/+6 on the Thallid Omnivore.
Yeah, he knows about it. No more Baird as well, so plenty of mana available for Ben Stark. I feel like Mike Sigrist it took too long to find land number 5 for him. He's still working through to try to find if there's any way out. He also has some unknown information in the sense that he can cast a fairy plus it, get a card. Instead, he's going to go for Blessed Light and leave up his Gideon's Reproach.
Yep.
But the instant speed Spore Swarm is so threatening here.
Sprout Storm.
Yep.
He's going to play it right now. And that's going to do it. Ben Stark doing it all main phase as well. That plays around any type of shenanigans with Gideon's Reproach. A little smile from Sigrist, but that was a tough one for him.
Like, I couldn't really do anything on that board.
Yeah.
That's why it was kind of awkward. I'm not saying we wouldn't have won, but I did have a ton to dump post-draft.
Oh, we don't have necklace. I just see your I haven't seen your sideboard
we'll
yet.
just trade
And you heard that from Ben Stark.
that.
He was saying, he's like, look, I'm not saying you wouldn't have won, but I did have a whole lot to do, he said, post-wrath, right, which is, of course, shorthand for him being fully aware.
But Ben's trickiest turns were the ones where he had to decide to play actively into the Ruinous Blast.
Yeah.
So Mending of Dominaria and Thorn Elemental, even though he knew that from a card advantage perspective that was not a good play, but because he could map out the turn, like the next 3-4 turns in advance, he knew that he had to play it exactly this way.
That's right, and he did so. Ben Stark getting the job done here in game number 1. We're going to bring you game number 2 very shortly here. Please do stick around. We'll be back right after these messages. Welcome back to the feature match here in Las Vegas, Nevada. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Simon Gertzen. We're early in the day here on day 2 of the Magic the Gathering World Championship. We've got 2 of the best limited players in the land. That's Mike Sigrist you're taking a look at there, playing against a good friend of his, Ben Stark. And seriously, these are 2 of the absolute best in the business when it comes to limited. They both love this format on top of that. So we're in for a real treat as we got a chance to see Mike Sigrist try to navigate his way through a tough mana situation. But just as interesting was watching Ben Stark, A, figure out what was going on, and then B, figure out how to navigate it. I mean, he multiple times put cards into play that if Sigrist had simply drawn a land would have just been exiled on the spot. But he figured, I can't just sit here.
Nope. Play to his outs, and that's exactly what you do. You know that there's a chance that the 5th land is on top of Mike's deck. You know that there's a chance that it isn't. And you just have to find the line that gives you the best chance of winning in either of these cases.
Ben says, good luck, Siggy. And we're going to get underway here with Mike Sigrist on the play. He's kept his hand. Let's see if Ben has a hand that he likes as well.
Good to start.
Ben's deck a little unconventional for the format, though. You do see it. The focal point of his deck are 2 copies of Grow from the Ashes, and then he's kind of built out some value and some plans around that.
And what you might be confused about is these 2-mana goblins. But these are really just there because he is such a late-game oriented 4-color deck. He needs something to trade with early drops, and that's just basically him saying, I can't play a game where I don't have anything to do on turn 2.
Okay, we see some trading off here early. But Dana the Capuchin is left standing, and she lines up pretty nicely against the Yavimaya Saphert. So Mike Sigrist able to employ a more proactive game plan in the early stages here. He's already out cleanly ahead. Let's see if he can make a play here.
No double white.
Interesting. No play thus far either for the turn. That's concerning if you're sitting in Mike Sigrist's seat. Ben Stark, though, realizes he still does have 4 mana available, so we're not done with the turn quite yet.
The individual card quality in Mike's deck is through the roof. The amount of legends, legendary sorceries, and the Teferi to top it all off.
So Ben is going to play a Keldon Raider, and he actually discards one of his more powerful late-game cards. Apparently wanting the lands is what I would assume. He didn't have any left in his hand when he did so. He did find one with it, but the Gitu Chronicler's now in the graveyard, though it doesn't look like it has a whole lot to get back in sight, so Ben's not going to value it super highly here.
Super interesting hands by these players. If you take a look, Sigrist 2 Baird Steward of Argive, uncastable with a single white. Coldwater Snapper, too expensive, and Unwind. Interesting card for this matchup for sure.
He might be unwinding a Grow from the Ashes, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. Ben is reaching out into a bunch of different colors, and I mentioned it at the onset. His deck in some ways revolves around Grow from the Ashes, enabling a few different splashes into blue, strangely. He's got an Academy Drake there, but black, Cast Down, and a Thallid Omnivore there.
Yeah, and Mike finds the second white source, so suddenly all of his cards are enabled. We might also see Coldwater Snapper come down next turn. And now if you take a look at Stark's hand, you see how valuable that Grow from the Ashes would have been. Academy Drake kicked, Blood Tallow Candle easily activated, and all of his splash colors fixed. Instead, he has to get by with relatively mediocre cards.
So Venturous Impulse is going to find Grun, the Lonely King. And look at that hand there for Ben Stark. He's got that Academy Drake just kind of hanging out in hand, and it's not going anywhere.
Also, Grun is missing a second green source.
Wow, so that unwind is proving very critical here.
Absolutely. Great choice by Mike Sigrist to counter that Grow from the Ashes. I'm just checking if that's actually a main deck card. No. Unwind also coming in from the sideboard for this matchup.
And he also saw Spore Swarm, a few other targets there in that first game, so he's into it. And now Sigrist is going to attack with both creatures. Certainly representing Gideon's Reproach, and I spy with my little eye here, Simon, he did find one for his draw step.
Does mean that Coldwater Snapper would have to wait one more turn. Ben is really only exposing the Keldon Raiders. I don't think that's a bad block. I think that's very reasonable.
And there we go. A great use for Gideon's Reproach here, killing a 4-mana blocker on the other side.
Also, tiny play there, but 2 additional life gained by Mike by letting first strike damage resolve first.
Good point. Ooh, there's a forest right off the top of the library for Stark, which means Grun the Lonely King. Lonely no longer. He's got a couple of Sapperling friends, but that is the type of card that is really annoying for Sigrist to deal with, because he needs to have one of his hard removal spells, or else he doesn't want to start having a chump block down the line here with his good legendary creatures.
No, he might even have to sacrifice his Memorial to Glory, which is his 6th land, and the second white source, just to have some chump blockers, because all of the creatures he has on the battlefield, you don't want to block with those.
Yeah, he might even just take the hit this turn.
No way you're triple blocking a Grun either.
No.
10-10.
Yeah, it doesn't even work, so. Sigrist goes, that's a 10-10, huh? All right, well, I'll just take 10. I'll go down to 14, no problem. Another green source off the top here for Ben Stark. He's just about out of gas in hand, is he? He plays Bloodstone Goblin. That leaves him with, I like this play a lot from Ben, another subtle Dominaria-specific play. He's kept a Blood Tallow Candle in his hand. It's really tempting to just go, oh, I'll just get this thing on the battlefield. But letting your opponent know that you have it completely changes how Mike Sigrist might approach combat or what cards he decides to play. Ooh. Urza's Ruinous Blast off the top of the library for Sigrist.
Oh, that's huge. But there is still Grun, and we actually saw exactly this interaction in the previous game.
Yeah, I was complaining about Urza's Ruinous Blast being not a card I'm a huge fan of for that reason, and you see it again. It comes up a lot.
It's still a great card in Sigrist's deck. You would always play it.
If I could always cast it, I would always play it. That is true. It's just when you combine the fact that it's difficult to cast in many scenarios, in fact, sometimes literally uncastable, and that it doesn't always do the thing that you really need it to do, that I dock serious points from it for that. But Sigrist has found a very nice home for it with plenty of enablers, and I would certainly be running in his case as well.
And Sigrist is losing one of his legends here.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. He let his Danitha Capuchin get double blocked there.
Ah, but he's waiting one more turn?
That did not die.
Yeah, first strike only, no double strike there for Danitha Capuchin, so Ben gets to keep his Yavimaya Sapper. Just a little oversight from our players there, but we're back in business.
I love how Ben bins his creature and then he's apologizing for it.
Well, it is his job, too, to maintain that game state, Simon.
It's clearly not advantageous. I like how Mike is milking this game for a little bit more value as well. He's not giving away that he has the Ruinous Blast. He's just saying, look, I get to deal some damage. You don't get to deal damage.
But look at this potentially huge backfire. Although it looks like Mike Sigrist has sold the fact that he doesn't have a card like that, or even maybe Ben just doesn't care, because Ben now has played Blood Tallow Candle and could kill Baird, leaving Sigrist with no legendary creatures left.
And you can still do that end of turn. And if Mike Sigrist casts the Ruinous Blast here, you kill the Baird anyway, and you have Grand the Lonely King against nothing. Blood Tallow Candle would also have been exposed to the Ruinous Blast, by the way, if you just run it out carelessly.
If you run it out without the mana to activate, absolutely. Awkward spot here for Sigrist. Now what does he have to do? Well, he's going to play a Knight of New Benalia and pass the turn back, but Grun the Lonely King crunching in for 10 a turn and forcing Sigrist to block, not quite literally, but pretty close to it, is really annoying. And look at that, Ben uses the candle. He's going to be mana efficient here. And now we do have that situation where Sigrist has a card in his hand that he just can't even put on the stack.
I think he has the right idea here by that he says, I have to get aggressive and I have to milk the Ruinous Blast for more value because Gran is on the other side of the table already.
Yeah, and Ben Stark has now pumped the brakes. The other good news for Sigrist is that he does have another copy of Baird, so he can set up that Ruinous Blast again if that's his game plan, or at least have it as a fail-safe. But right now, the players are in a standoff.
Yeah, the one thing I really dislike is losing the Danitha.
Yeah, trading it off for a Bloodstone Goblin?
That part I didn't understand because it made it so much riskier that you wouldn't be able to cast the Ruinous Blast, and also it's just an exchange that you don't want to make.
Ben doesn't need much here, though, to start getting chippy again with that Grun, right? He's decided to pump the brakes because Grun will hold back the turtle on its own, But yeah, any blocker of any consequence, especially something big, would allow Grun to do this, start attacking again. So Grun's going to hit the red zone, gobble up one of these tokens. And what is the follow-up? He's going to play Nature Spiral to get back his Gitu Chronicler and then get back the Nature Spiral with that.
Infinite blockers.
He's got the combo.
Well, it's quite a weak combo, but
no, it's the combo.
The combo.
Yeah.
The infinite looping.
We're not
1-3.
We're not ascribing any adjectives to it beyond the combo. Wow. Ben Stark putting the dream together here.
And you can tell why players love this draft format.
Yes.
Right? You can do so many things.
And I mean, it's still funny to me because Ben did have to go a little deep in this draft. He has had an Academy Drake in his hand this entire game, and he can't cast it. He's also splashing black, by the way, which he couldn't cast either. So
look, Marsh, if we were to grade these two decks or the individual cards, either one, Mike Sigrist would be winning
by a lot.
By a landslide.
Whoa, I think Ben might have just drawn his best card in his deck, though. Siege Gang Commander off the top of the library. If my eyes don't deceive me, there it is. Siege Gang hits the battlefield. That's a huge draw for Ben Stark, giving him tons of blockers. In fact, he's just going to cash in and get in for a huge hit right now, forcing yet another chump block effectively by Sigrist. That's what Mike's going to do. No cards in sight. What did he find off the top of the library?
Weight of Memory, I believe.
Okay, I think he has enough time to make use of that.
Does he really? It looks like he has a lot of life to work with, but every Grun attack is very close to lethal.
Well, I feel like he just needs one turn, right? I mean, he's going to draw these cards, have a bunch of lands, untap, and do stuff.
Play a legend.
Ooh. How about a Teferi?
How about a Teferi?
Yeah.
That's always a good start.
He just found a Teferi. That can stem the bleeding on this Grun situation quite quickly.
And the Ruinous Blast is definitely key to this puzzle.
Land Divination? Oh, what a... Jeez!
What a turn.
He's drawn 6 cards this turn.
Can he get better than that?
Well...
You didn't know anything's irrelevant, right? A deep freeze.
Deep freeze and 2 lands, yeah.
Deep freeze and 2 lands were what were milled off of the Weight of Memory, but Mike Sigrist having the valuest of value turns there. But is it going to be enough against Siege Gang Commander and Grun, the Lonely King? He's just got the Coldwater Snapper on defense. It is a great defensive creature, but Grun, boy, Grun's been a big problem for Sigrist.
And also this Coldwater Snapper is not too far away from just killing Ben in a single turn. If you were to put an aura on it that gives flying, Ben is actually not that far away from dying. No on Sarah's Wings in Mike Sigrist's deck, though.
All right, back to you after the chump block with the Coldwater Snapper. Sigrist at a cool 16 life.
Even playing Board the Weatherlight in his deck.
He's already found all of his good stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't have 10 mana, though. He can't go Teferi plus Ruinous Blast.
I wonder if Ben has decided that the Nature Spiral is best used for perhaps if Grun were to die somehow.
Or Siege Gang Commander.
Just sack it and then just rebuy it and just go for a bunch of damage.
I think with the Siege Gang in play, that's your most likely target.
Sure.
I tried to help you, Siggy. I tried to help you. Only because I've done that 3 times this tournament and sold it all 3 times.
We like to be consistent with the die that we choose just so that the viewing experience stays good. And we use those purple ones, usually for -1/-1 counters. So this is kind of the key play here for Sigrist, is to get rid of Grun, at least temporarily.
So does Sigrist have a land drop here?
No.
No. Okay, because otherwise Ben would have had to respond to the activation by killing Teferi.
That's right.
That could have been huge.
Yes. And there's Karn's Temporal Sundering, but again, this is a big problem here for Sigrist because he's not going to have Teferi on his next turn.
Oh, this is, yeah.
Done?
Yeah, good.
Start considering his options with the Siege Gang Commander here. He could just kill Teferi using the token, just throwing it at Teferi, but he could also just attack Teferi with it or with 2 creatures.
I think Ben is doing some math here, whether he potentially has lethal or anything like that. I just expect him to attack Teferi for 1, Sigrist for 4, and...
Really? Oh, but I mean, what about Gideon's Reproach there?
Well, you still have the sacrifice.
You just sack in response if needed. Okay.
So with Siege Gang Commander, there's really no risk that you don't deal with Teferi.
Yeah, Teferi is not going to be on the battlefield no matter what by the time it's Sigrist's turn, so he takes care of it there. There's a Nature Spiral, and maybe we are just going to combo off for a little while longer.
The value.
Yeah.
Imagine if it was a Goblin.
Yeah, oh, wow, that'd be insane. But still, this does preserve that option that we talked about before where he can get back Siege Gang later on. He just gets effectively... calling it free is probably a bit of a stretch, but he's going to get a Gitu Chronicler on the battlefield for the low, low cost of 8 mana. That combo is... You know, if you're a fan of thin value...
Thin value?
That's
it's better with Soul Salvage, let's put it that way.
There you go. All right. So what does Mike have, though? This is, remember, the big turn after he had played Teferi plus... kind of went off. He's got a Quende and an Urza's Ruinous Blast. So the first thing is that Ben needs to make sure that this Siege Gang Commander does not get exiled. It ends up in his graveyard. And so he's going to sacrifice itself rather than its little friend so that he can use his Nature Spiral to get it back. How do you beat 2 Siege Gang Commanders having gone on the stack and resolve? That is extraordinarily difficult.
Legendary Sorceries are a good start, but Sigrist hasn't really had... the pieces to this puzzle come together. What a game.
Of course, Quende died in that transaction. Quende died so that Mike Sigrist could put Urza's Ruinous Blast on the stack.
So that Mike Sigrist could live.
That's right. The downside, of course, is that Quende did not end up surviving that, but he had to play it just to be able to cast it. Oh, wow. Looks like the library's getting a little thin there for Sigrist as well.
Ben started playing on all angles.
Transitioning to the mill plan? No, probably not.
Probably just doing some math about which answers, removal cards could be in Sigrist's hand.
There's no reasonable answer.
And it's kind of interesting because even after all that we've seen from Sigrist, we've seen Teferi, we've seen Urza's Ruinous Blast, right? We've seen multiple legendary creatures, 2 copies of Bear, Daneth the Capuchin, Quende. His hand right now, 2 bricks.
Yeah, and look at Ben Stark's graveyard. These are not the premium cards of Dominaria Draft.
No.
He can be so proud of this accomplishment, basically.
I agree. I mean, he's had Mike Sigrist now. Look, in the first game, Mike missed his 5th land drop forever. So that was fortunate. But still, Ben needed to make sure that he played in a way that put enough pressure on Mike to get him even if he hit his land. And he was able to do so. All right. He found his big hitter here. Tolarian Scholar is going to hit the battlefield now for Sigrist. And here we go again. Let's start chipping in with Big Grun.
Yep. It's the play pattern we already know.
Yep. And there's a Thorn Elemental as well. And there's no way out for Sigrist from here, right? He's facing down Siege Gang Commander, and he says, I have 2 lands and an uncastable legendary sorcery. Ben Stark wins 2 games to 0. All right, looks like we're going to be able to jump over and see, well, our draft master, Elias Wattsfelt. He's going to be playing against Matt Nass. Both of these players in the middle part of the field at 4-4 with some work to do if they're going to keep their eye on that top 4. A win here, well, that would help. A loss here, and you're up against it. With that 5th loss, you may not be guaranteed to make it in, even if you win all the rest of your rounds.
If you lose here, you are not planning on playing on Sunday.
Right. So a big match for these players. Let's take a look at the board state. We've got, let's see, Rona Raff Capuchin, Matt Nass at 20 life, blocking with a Skittering Surveyor and an 8th Seer Glider. This is game 3. No, he's going to switch around his block. So let's let him get these things set up. Oh, I see. We have Garna. Did he just play it? Can't tell because his lands are just in one big pile there.
No, I think he cast something else. He's
Okay.
trying to decide how his
attacks are going to go.
How his attacks are going to look like.
Everything has haste. He may have cast something this turn that could have changed the math a little bit. All right, he's in. He's just going to attack with his 2 biggest cards. So he was lining up potential blocks with 8th Seer Glider attacks, with the Knight of Malice as a potential attacker. I'm a little surprised he didn't send in the Knight of Malice here. It's got 3 power and first strike right now, so no obvious blockers, although perhaps fearing a double block of some sort.
Double blocks for sure, and that is tapped out after all.
All right, we do get a look at his mana base now, so mountain swamps and a forest down there as well. It looks like Matt also has a Skizix that's on ice.
And Matt is black-red splashing Diary Gas. I believe that's what BDM told us. That explains the forest right there.
It's always tough to splash when you're black-red, but you see the Skittering Surveyor there on the battlefield for Nass, and that's a great one to help you out. Well, there's a real block.
Yeah, Elias is not taking any prisoners here.
No, just triple blocking. No prisoners, but some damage. He's going to take 3 from the Deathbloom Thallid.
2 more 3-color decks.
Yeah.
Really interesting to see whether that's because these players are playing at such a high level that you have to get your power when you can, or whether that's actually something that's desirable for the majority of decks in Dominaria.
Academy Drake with kicker from Elias Wattsfelt. As he passes his turn back, he's looking to desperately try to stabilize this board. Oh, but there's an Eviscerate from Nass to take down the big flyer in the air. And now we see the other 2 3-powered creatures hit the red zone for Matt. Ooh, I might have spoken too soon. He's also lining up what other attacks look like before locking in. Nope, now he's going to lock him in. Just the 2 3-powered attackers. Again, no happy blocks here for Wattsfelt.
No, really not. And I might not be giving Nass enough credit here, but it looks like he's not as confident in these kind of combat math situations. It looks like he always double checks, how is this going to end up? What am I doing here? Is this am I making a mistake? And he's an amazing player, of course, but he's not like Ben Stark, who just lives and breathes limited. Something you can do when Knight of Malice is pressuring you too much is actually aggressively block with your white creatures. But that Wrath Compassion is still on the battlefield, of course.
Here's an Academy Journey Mage now for Elias. Selecting his target. Yeah, it's just going to be the obvious one, the Knight of Malice.
It was between Knight of Malice and one of the Sapperling tokens. But if the Knight of Malice comes in for 3 next turn, then that's something that a Sapperling has to work a lot for.
Right, because this clock is starting to get very sketchy here if you're sitting in Wattsfelt's seat. An all-out attack in a couple of turns is probable.
Exactly.
He's not quite there yet, though.
And Wrath Compassion's job is to hold off that Acer Glider.
Yes. I mean, his job is Ship's Mage, but Wattsfelt needs to find more and more action. Boy, it's just another land, at least off for the play for the turn, though. He does have an interactive spell that could be very important if Matt Nass decides to tread a little bit too aggressively. He has blink of an eye in his hand.
And playing it very conservatively as well, not rushing it, but waiting to see what he could potentially do with it.
And he's going to go ahead and use blink of an eye on his own Academy Journey Mage. He's going to pay the kicker cost, so he'll get to draw a card. He did block first, so no damage this turn. Ooh. Cloud Reader Sphinx was the card that he drew.
One of my favorite cards in...
I might be wrong about that, actually. It is one of my favorite cards too.
Yeah.
That part I'm not wrong about, but I might have been wrong about what I saw. We'll let him. I think he only has the one other card left, which is
that's Academy Junior Mage.
Okay, well, he's going to have to settle for...
So he bounced it and you just saw 4 colors and a blue card in his hand?
No, I actually thought I was more wrong than that, Simon, but yeah, so...
But he did get to flash in Skittering Surveyor, so he did get a bit of rough Capuchin value.
Yeah, and another land, which really isn't what he wants to see at this point. But he's able to kind of tread water here by once again casting the Journey Mage and keeping the only really good attacker on Matt Nass's side at bay. Ooh. I do see a Shiv and Fire, so Raf Capuchin, see you later, buddy. It's going to send him packing, and as you mentioned, his whole job was to keep back that Acer Glider, and now it's coming in for 2 damage, knocking Elias Wattsfelt down to 4, and this clock has gotten woefully short. Wattsfelt's going to need something pretty special here. What can he find? Nothing. He's going to extend the hand, and Matt Nass still very much live for a top 4 finish here at Worlds. He's 5-4. He's got a lot of work to do. Let's not make any mistake about that. He has got to win a lot of matches. If he wants to be secure with his seat there, he's going to need to win out the last round of draft, which we have one more round coming up of Dominaria Booster Draft. After that, we're going to be transitioning over to Standard here in Las Vegas for the World Championship. We certainly hope that you will stick with us. We'll be back right after these messages.